Hello and welcome on this video presentation of our Human-Robot Interaction conference paper. I'm Guillaume Vailland and I'm going to talk about vestibular feedback on a virtual reality wheelchair driving simulator, a pilot study. Many people with disabilities lack mobility, leading to reduced autonomy and social life. To regain or retain this mobility, some of them use power wheelchairs. However, driving a power wheelchair is a difficult task that requires a combination of cognitive, visual and visuo-spatial abilities. Driving a power wheelchair safely is even harder for people with severe impairments. Thus, training programs exist but reveal themselves inefficient and, more importantly, unsuitable for some people with strong disabilities. In this context of power wheelchair driving training, using simulator based on virtual reality (VR) for particular training is a great solution. Indeed, VR is a tool that allows simulation of controllable and safe environments, in this case, a virtual environment. Adapted to our context, VR makes it possible to create adapted training scenarios in ecological situations, meaning daily life situations like an outside walk with a lot of potential dangers. However, building a good VR experience is not trivial. First, VR relies on the sense of presence, SOP, which is the sense of being there in the simulation. The more sense of presence, the more chance there will be that user behave as if he was in a real environment, and so learn from the simulation. Sense of presence arises from many levels, from the virtual environment quality to sense of embodiment, interactions, and so on. The second key to build a good VR experience is cybersickness. It's the VR major drawback when it comes to simulate motion. Cybersickness refers to discomforts similar to motion sickness that arises from cognitive conflicts. For example, when your eye sees a movement that your body and vestibular system do not perceive. With those two keys in mind, sense of presence and cybersickness, the pluridisciplinary team from Rennes of the European InterregAdapt project designed a VR-based power wheelchair simulator. The simulator design is user-centered because our team worked closely with clinicians to best suit the targeted population needs. This simulator aims to be used as a training tool and as a rehabilitation tool, but also revealed itself useful in other contexts. Feel free to read the full presentation of our simulator in the paper User-Centered Design of a Multisensory Power Wheelchair Simulator Towards Training and Rehabilitation Application. In fact, the unique feature of the simulator is its motion platform, completely designed by our team. Its dimensions are similar to a real power wheelchair, but unlike a real one, it has 4 actuators and 1 turntable instead of wheels, which gives us 4 degrees of freedom. Those 4 degrees of freedom allow the platform to simulate forces using the tilt coordination principle, meaning that we bend the platform in order to simulate forces using the gravitational force. As such, the platform is able to give haptic and vestibular feedback. Haptic feedback are the reactions to the virtual environment, like bumps, holes, and collisions with obstacles. Vestibular feedback represents accelerations and forces directly coming from user commands. That's feedback we investigate in this paper. Indeed, in order to ensure the efficiency and relevancy of the platform, an experiment has been conducted to investigate the vestibular feedback impact on both sense of presence and cybersickness. Thus, instead of rendering both haptic and vestibular feedback, the haptic feedback has been deactivated to allow an unbiased investigation. The experiment hypotheses were pretty simple. First, the addition of the vestibular feedback to the visual feedback supposedly increases the SOP as it improves the realism of the virtual experiment. Second, the addition of the vestibular feedback decreases the cybersickness and discomforts by eliminating cognitive conflicts between what users sees and feel through the vestibular system. For this experiment, a virtual reality headset, the HTC Vive Pro, has been used as a display interface. Also, standard wheelchair seat and joystick have been used as the motion platform is mechanically and electronically compatible with real power wheelchair. Participants were also equipped with earmuffs to avoid any sound distractions and focus on the virtual tasks they had to do. Indeed, inside an outdoor virtual environment representing a square of the French city Rennes, each participant had to complete a navigation task. The task was built to maximize the number of acceleration variations to be sure that user would felt vestibular feedback, if any. The user simply had to follow the red arrows and symbols that each represented an action listed on the right. This navigation task had to be completed twice, one in each conditions, with the vestibular feedback and without the vestibular feedback. After each task completion, the participant answered the 3 subjective questionnaires, the NASA Task Load Index, the iGroup Presence Questionnaire, and the Immersive Virtual Environments Questionnaire. We just had to compare results in each condition to validate or invalidate hypotheses. In total, 29 able-bodied participants were enrolled. As a pilot study and first experiment with a new device, it was not possible to enroll people with disabilities. However, the experiment acted as a new step towards ethical approval for experiments with clinical patients. All participants were naive concerning the simulator and environment, so they could not understand what we were assessing, and none knew about the vestibular feedback or the platform itself. Nevertheless, we eliminated a lot of collected data due to a strict validation policy. Any participant potentially biased by sound, bugs, knowledge of the platform were discarded from the analysis. And finally, here are the obtained results. For the paper and presentation, we only kept significant results among all the questionnaires, 3 from IPQ, 4 from IVEQ, and 1 from TLX. Other items were either not significant, with a p-value too big, or irrelevant regarding the hypothesis. I'm gonna quickly jump to a more telling representation with box plots. In light blue is the condition with vestibular feedback, CM, and in dark blue the condition without, CV. As you can see, the 3 items from the iGroup Presence Questionnaire validate the hypothesis 1, that vestibular feedback increases sense of presence. The significant result from the NASA Task Load Index validates the hypothesis 2, the vestibular feedback decreases cybersickness. Same for the IVEQ significant items. The first 3 validate the hypothesis 1 and the last one validates the hypothesis 2. We can now discuss our results, first by pointing out the user study limitations. Will we obtain similar results with patients with cognitive impairments? We believe that adding vestibular feedback won't make any difference for some patients, but for others, it will impact the efficiency and relevancy of the simulation in a positive way, as it did here. Also, we could imagine collecting more data, not only subjective measures, which are hard to unbiased, but also objective measures, heartbeat, electrodermal activity, etc., but it would have needed more material and more time, whereas the experiment was already about 40 minutes long. And that's already a limitation. Participants might have felt tired at some point. Even though we eliminated the bias of time by alternate first condition, finding some ways to shorten the experiment might be crucial, even more with patients. About our simulator now, it is important to point out that we haven't eliminated cybersickness totally. We just have proven by experiment that adding vestibular feedback reduces it or postpones the point of no return. So our goal now is to still improve the vestibular feedback and also test the haptic feedback and the combination of both. Moreover, about the simulator, it would be interesting to improve the virtual environment by populating it, make it less empty with people around and more realistic behaviors. It surely would have an effect on the sense of presence. Now, if you step out of our context of Power Wheelchair, results remain valid and interesting in other projects. Indeed, we have proven that the addition of vestibular feedback enhances VR experience, and it could be adapted for robotic teleoperation and telepresence. We believe that feeling the acceleration of a machine, getting the vestibular feedback of a vehicle as if you were inside and retrieving the real sensations is key to VR teleoperation. To conclude, we conducted an experiment that proves our hypothesis: vestibular feedback increases SOP and decreases cybersickness. Even though we presented it as a pilot study, because it doesn't enroll participants from our simulator targeted population and represent a step toward bigger experiments, results remains valid and still interesting as guidelines for us and could be used in other projects that involve vehicle motion. In future works, we will continue to improve our simulator, but also plan to investigate the haptic feedback in the same way that we did for the vestibular feedback, and finally work with patients and compare their behavior in the same task in virtual and in real world with a stand-up OOE chair and the